Welcome back to my channel, Famous and Fabulous. Imagine this. An unexpected announcement interrupted a peaceful morning. The renowned guitarist Mick Jones and Foreigner's co-founder has now spoken up about his long-standing conflicts with the band's legendary leader, Gramm. The candor of Jones's remarks astounded fans who had been making assumptions about Foreigner's inner workings for years. He did more than merely provide a nostalgic glimpse into the band's past. He exposed the disputes, annoyances, and creative disagreements that had dogged their collaboration for many years. Jones and Gramm have long been regarded as one of the most popular rock duos. Two men whose combined skills resulted in classic singles like I Want to Know What Love Is and Cold as Ice. However, beneath the polished exterior of their music was a tense relationship. Jones claims that although Graham's personality was essential to the band's early success, it frequently caused conflict. And what began as arguments over ideas turned into a more serious personal conflict that would eventually break the band up. With sold-out tours and records that topped the charts, Foreigner was having a great time in the late 1970s. They appeared to be invincible. Gramm swiftly rose to prominence as the band's face, thanks to his strong voice and captivating stage presence, while Mick Jones, the creative force behind many of their successes, put in a lot of overtime behind the scenes. However, the band's relationship began to deteriorate as their notoriety increased. Imagine two forces acting against each other. One is motivated by control, the other by creativity. Always the painstaking artist, Jones was notorious in the studio for his meticulousness. Gramm, on the other hand, valued spontaneity because he was driven by heart and instinct. Their divergent musical philosophies frequently resulted in contentious disputes. Jones desired accuracy, Gramm desired fervor. Additionally, the personal hostility between them grew more intense as these creative conflicts did. Tensions had escalated to a boiling point by the middle of the 1980s. Jones said that Gramm was hard to work with since he didn't want to follow the band's changing musical approach. Gramm, however, felt constrained by Jones's insistence on having complete control over their work. After years of brewing animosity, the situation got so intolerable that Gramm departed Foreigner to pursue a solo career in 1990, and what ought to have been a period of great success for the band unfortunately turned into one that was characterized by disillusionment and discord. Gramm left Foreigner for more than just a career change. It was an individual wager. He wanted to become a solo artist without the limitations on his creativity that he believed Jones had placed on him. It seems promising at first. Ready or Not, his 1987 debut solo album, featured his vocal and composer skills and produced singles like Midnight Blue. However, becoming famous outside of Foreigner wasn't simple. Imagine Gramm performing live on stage to audiences that had come expecting Foreigner's songs but were unimpressed by his solo work. New challenges arose as the strain increased. Gramm was fighting against more than just the music industry behind the scenes. Few people were aware of the personal demons he was dealing with. Gramm had left Foreigner due to conflict with Mick Jones, but his personal life was equally turbulent. As usual, fame came at a price. Graham's health suffered as a result of the strains of touring non-stop and sustaining a prosperous career. He started to suffer from extreme headaches and exhaustion in the early 1990s. At first, these symptoms were written off as stress. However, Gramm was given a condition that would change his life in 1997. He had a tumor in his brain. Consider the anxiety and apprehension that accompany such news. The idea of losing everything he had worked so hard to achieve was devastating for a guy whose voice had defined a period of rock music. Despite being benign, the tumor necessitated surgery, and the recuperation process was drawn out and difficult. Due to the medication he was administered, Graham's weight skyrocketed, and his previously strong and steady voice became weaker. He was severely emotionally and physically damaged by the encounter. Even though he eventually got better and started playing music again, the experience altered him. The man who had performed Jukebox Hero in front of crowded arenas had changed. He had confronted death and survived, but not before he had borne the scars of the conflict. Lou Gramm and Mick Jones bravely decided to get back together and revive Foreigner in 1992 after years apart. It was an exciting moment for fans, one that rekindled dreams of the band's heyday. Imagine it. With the echoes of their timeless anthems filling arenas once more, Gramm and Jones appear to have rekindled their once iconic collaboration as they return to the stage together. Two legends stood side by side in front of the crowd, eager to retake their position in rock history. However, the story was much more intricate behind the scenes. Even if they were temporarily hidden, old tensions persisted. Jones and Gramm might have been on the same stage, but their visions were different. Their strained relationship had not been much improved by the years apart. Imagine a hurriedly constructed bridge over a roaring river that is strong enough to support itself, but always in danger of collapsing. It was impossible to overlook the fissures in their collaboration that resulted from years of disagreements over ideas and animosity. Despite their best efforts, every song they created and every tour they planned evoked recollections of previous arguments. Disparities in creativity continued to be a cause of contention. Gramm, who has always been the band's soulful leader, advocated for music that was authentic, emotive, and powered by his strong voice. Jones, on the other hand, experimented with different styles and production methods in an effort to change the band's sound. As a result, the cooperation resembled a tug-of-war more than a cooperative effort. Every choice had to be negotiated. Each recording session is a patience test. Fans didn't see the stressful meetings where egos battled, the quiet arguments that took place in the studio, or the lingering animosity that pervaded the atmosphere. But they did hear the music. Even so, they were able to collaborate to create new music and even release an album in spite of the underlying animosity. However, the harmony was only surface level. Off stage, things were different from how they seemed together in front of their audience. Imagine a performance where the backstage stillness betrays a different story than the onstage chemistry. Despite sharing the limelight, Gramm and Jones's relationship was deteriorating due to years of unresolved conflict. The inevitable occurred by 2003. The gap between them had widened to an unbridgeable extent. Gramm made the painful decision to leave Foreigner once more because he was fed up with the ongoing arguments and felt more and more excluded. There would be no going back this time. An era came to an end with the last split. For Gramm, it marked the end of an important chapter in his life, as well as a bittersweet farewell and a release from the pressures that had troubled him. It was a time of reckoning for Jones. He kept up his leadership of Foreigner by introducing a fresh lineup and advancing the band. However, there was an indisputable gap created by Graham's absence. Their split represented more than just the dissolution of their business relationship. A complex relationship based on both intelligence and resentment came to an end. For Gramm and Jones, it was the culmination of years of conflicting beliefs and unresolved hurts, but fans may have perceived it as a simple separation. With the burden of their shared past, they had begun as partners, developed into rivals, and now parted ways as strangers. Gramm sought a more sedate existence, withdrawing from the spotlight to consider the tumultuous path he had travelled. Though the intensity of his years with Foreigner had left its mark, he occasionally performed alone. The music was no longer the exclusive focus. After years of fighting, it was about finding peace, both private and business-related. Jones had to redefine Foreigner without Graham's identity in order to lead the group. He persisted because he was committed to preserving the tradition. However, fans no longer saw the same Foreigner. The band had persevered through the difficulties. However, the wounds from that storm could not be concealed. The 1992 reunion wasn't a triumphant comeback. It was a short-lived pause in a protracted conflict. The joy of seeing Gramm and Jones together again was what fans had been waiting for. However, it was a desperate attempt to make amends for what had already been lost for the two men at its core. They attempted to make it work at one point, but came to the conclusion that some rifts could never be fully repaired, no matter how hard you tried. Today's disclosure by Mick Jones serves as a reminder of Lou Gramm's nuanced legacy. He was more than a frontman. He was a man who dedicated himself fully to his music, frequently at considerable personal expense. His narrative is one of contrasts, love and treachery, cooperation and strife, triumph and tragedy. Graham's voice contributed to the definition of a time, but he was a man battling both internal and external influences. His disagreements with Mick Jones went beyond simple creativity. They stemmed from a fight for recognition and control, and were intensely personal. Even though their collaboration resulted in some of rock's best successes, it also left behind wounds that will never completely go away. Fans are left to consider the real price of achievement as they process Jones's remarks. Every great band has a backstory of hardship, and every famous voice represents a person battling against odds the public may never completely comprehend. There is more to Lou Graham's tale than just music. It's about perseverance, grief, and the never-ending search for one's identity in a world that expects everything and provides little in return.